Welcome to the second session of UCRF Knowledge Circles, an initiative by the Union of Concerned Researchers in Fashion to foster dialogue, share research, and build an activist knowledge ecology. Guided by the UCRF Manifesto, these bi-monthly gatherings bring together diverse voices to explore systemic change in fashion through interdisciplinary research. Coordinated by Hakan and I, Vineet Jain, the Knowledge Circles are a space to challenge assumptions, exchange ideas, and inspire action. Today, we are honored to welcome Dr. Alexandra Palmer, who will share insights from her innovative art history seminar at the University of Toronto, considering sustainable textiles and fashions in the age of climate crisis. Her work invites us to rethink climate education through cultural narratives and creative engagement. Thank you for joining us. We will begin with Alexandra's presentation, followed by an open discussion. Welcome, Dr. Alexandra Palmer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. I'm here in Canada, in Toronto, and I wish to acknowledge that this land has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit for thousands of years. And today, this meeting place is still the home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis peoples from across Turtle Island. And as a settler, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work on this occupied land. And I also welcome all my colleagues from around the world into this virtual meeting today. Next slide, please. So today I'm going to be talking about a class that I invented at the University of Toronto, which is a fourth year senior student seminar class, which is very nice because it's a small group of about 12 to 15 students in their last years, and I get them in January. So theoretically, they might graduate after they've taken my class. And I've taught at the university for years, and the idea was that, but I taught another course. I worked in the museum, and it was a lecture lab that I taught based on museums objects from the 18th century and around the world, and then becoming very concerned about the environmental issues, I proposed to do a completely new class that was really focused around textiles and fashion, the history of it, drawing upon my knowledge as a historian, but looking at today and what to do and trying to alleviate some of this climate anxiety. The class was approved, and then it finally got started during COVID, which of course would not have been my choice for anything or anyone's choice. So the way I structured the class was originally for online and to try and bring people together in a kind of virtual setting. And then of course now we're back in person, which really helps. And doing that, and because of the subject matter, and because I didn't need to have labs with physical old objects in the museum, I completely changed my teaching pedagogy. And while I'm a so-called expert, or I do know a lot about the history of textiles and fashion, and certainly within the museum and the collection here in Toronto, I'm not an expert on climate change, and I'm not an expert on solutions for this enormous problem. But I think of myself as a guide, and I can help the students try and unpack things, look at historical models, and kind of have a way to sort of grapple with the enormity of this problem. And hopefully they come out feeling that they have some tools in their kit, and they are able to engage in a meaningful way. And what that engagement is, of course, is up to them. And really the idea is to mitigate this climate anxiety. And I tell them, you can do well in this class if you take agency, you share and listen. And the class is built around the sharing, listening, talking, peer reviews, things that we need to be good at listening and understanding different ways and different people. So next slide, please. So I teach here at the University of Toronto, and it's in downtown Toronto. It's a nice old campus. It's physically in the middle of the city. So the students, it's a large university, and students come from all over the world, of course, as well as transit in from places that are cheaper to live than downtown Toronto. But the university is very aggressively working on climate change. And it's been ranked as the world's most sustainable university for the second consecutive year by the World University Ranking Sustainability Vetting System. And it recognizes the university's performance across various metrics, including environmental impact, social impact, governance, and is trying to encourage professionals to do their research and teach. Recently, they were given $60 million, which is a lot of money still, to help establish the Lawson Climate Institute, which is the largest gift to a Canadian university in support of climate change. And this will ramp up their ideas. And one of the goals is to help the students come out of the university with living labs and demonstrate practical and creative ways to create sustainable institutions. And that doesn't, of course, have to be a physical institution. Next slide, please. So I'd just like to back up a minute and let you understand where I'm coming from, because I always feel like an outlier, because I was an early bird in studying fashion and textile history in New York at the Met and NYU, and finally got a PhD when I had to go fishing because nobody recognized that as a proper subject to study. So I've been teaching in art history at University of Toronto, where I'm actually graduated from originally. So I'm sitting in this art history department teaching about fashion and textiles and historical fashion and textiles, and now I'm teaching about climate change. So I feel like a bit of an outlier there, but they're very gracious to accept me. And looking around the curriculum, that I couldn't really see too much that was about climate change and cultural change. There's lots and lots about scientific change and new ways of doing this and amazing things. So I always feel that I'm sort of trying to move into or create new groups. So the class looks at this idea of modernity and tries to sort of dissuade this idea that our times that we live in today, that the students are very cognizant of and about to be launched into the adult world and have to make a living. That our times are really better or worse than any other times. I look at history in a long way. And can we challenge this? Can we learn from the incredible escalating production of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, which must have been completely mad, and people must have felt as disenfranchised as many people do today. And now we have the internet, and this year I encountered AI really in the classroom in a different way. So the class discusses degrowth, ideas of commoning, utopian ideas about fashion, past, present, and possibly future. And all these ideas are embedded in global trade, politics, social justice, economics. And the class relies on this collaboration of listening, talking, reading. They have to do their homework and peer reviews. Next slide, please. So as a museum curator, I've done a lot of exhibitions over the time, and I've looked at different ways of reuse. I tend to think that the museum is in either a repository for clothes that were failures because they're in really good condition and nobody used them, or it's just kind of happenstance how things come into the museum. So the nice thing about the job, which I'm no longer in at the Royal Ontario Museum, is that the department is textiles and fashion, which historically tends to be separated, and I don't know how you can really do that. and it's also global. So you can make these very clear cross-cultural links across time, across the world, and we're very known for certain things like Dorothy Burnham's book Cut My Coat, which, if you don't know, look at that, which is sort of one of the first seminal things, really looking in a very simple but brilliant way at zero waste. I've become known for my work on Christian Dior. One of the last exhibitions I did was on quilts, which of course is all about conservation and repurposing and thinking very, very carefully about tiny little scraps of fabric. And I did an exhibition on seated fashion from a Toronto designer who worked for, does designs for people who have to use wheelchairs, which really was one of the hardest exhibitions I did, and one of the most interesting in some ways. So I come from this very kind of unorthodox or different background. Next slide, please. And looking at the UCRF Manifesto, in preparing this talk, which I like, and it's always good to go back to manifestos, and I actually have my students look at lots of different manifestos over time because I find them fascinating things. And so how does my class respond to this? How do we try and get that? Well, obviously, this idea of education, fostering change, looking across the world, and a kind of awareness, definitely new research practices and building confidence, and this idea of enacting new relationships. How do we approach things? How can we actually deal with all this stuff? And then finally, organized political action. It's not up to me to determine if people want to be out there on a picket line or something, but to some kind of action, and whether that's personal, you just how you manage your wardrobe, to how you talk about things at a cocktail party or whatever. But the YouTube channel that I'll talk about at the end of this talk has come out as a kind of, I didn't set out to do that, but it's become an interesting format for looking at things. Next slide, please. Thank you, Vinit. So the class is set up, it's 12 weeks. It fits, it's one semester. The students are coming mainly from art history, though I've had students come. I had a mathematician in my last class. I've had scientists, and it's very interesting actually having people who are not art historians in the class, and they add a lot. It's set up with lectures, obviously, but not. But these are much smaller components of the class, and they really round out other things. So these are some of the topics that I talk about, and then videos. I have them watch a lot of videos to kind of bring them up to snuff. Teaching about climate change, they haven't probably taken any other class. They're not coming from scientists. They don't know the science. So I have to kind of bring the class up to snuff in terms of kind of big concepts quite quickly. And the best way, I think, is letting them watch videos, because there's lots of really good videos. And I'm happy to share things, and I think actually building a really good resource that we share of good films and clips and news things is something that might be really interesting. And we talk about them in class. And it's interesting because most of them are quite old, especially if you're a young student, but some of them stand up really well. And of course, the situations that they're talking about are not exactly resolved yet. So, and we look at a lot of, in the lectures, we look at a lot of different kinds of materials. So we look at reports and charts and things that, as art historians, and even for myself, are not like the most sexy looking things. But I'm very cognizant of trying to bring in Canadian content because there is stuff happening in Canada. We are local, and this is the stuff that often doesn't get the biggest press either. And so looking at historical things, like recently I just did an article for a museum on fashion during the Second World War, and looking at all the make, do, amend, and this idea of government legislating fashion consumption and the amounts of fabrics that producers were allowed to do, and you couldn't have men's trousers with turn-ups at the bottom to save material. And this was like army officials and government bureaucrats deciding how fashion should be, and causing a lot of concern, particularly when it came to women's clothes. But there are these times, and looking at 18th century Indian chintz coming into Europe, there's these times when fashion has been heavily legislated, and there's a whole history of consumption practices and legislation around this. So it's not new that we're trying to make people accountable or have protectionist issues. We look at things like overshot day, water footprint, and what I'm trying to do is toss out all these this data that can help them, and and you can see so clearly so many things have been mapped. We know what is going to be underwater. We have a huge amount of information about the impact that we're making on the planet. But unless we can actually get together and talk and agree and change how we're doing things and reevaluate what's important, it doesn't matter. And that's really the nuts of this class, is how to impart this information, how to make it manageable, and let the students know that there's all this stuff out there that they can access, and how to read it and not be scared, not be intimidated, because it is very intimidating. Next slide, please. So as well, we have these discussions in class, and like, 15, 20 minutes at the beginning of class is chatting. And this, in the second class, which is very early on, and they don't really know who I am, and they might have decided they don't like it or want to drop it. I have this activity that I invented really because of COVID, and to try and bring them together, but it's important, and they have to go into their closets, and in class 2 come in wearing something that they've never worn or hardly ever worn. And they have to stand up and they have to answer 3 questions about it. When and why did you buy it? Why have you not worn it? And how will you get rid of it? And it's very, very simple. But the other thing I just like to say, this is my sweater that I wear. No, I do that in the next one. So whatever they do, I do as well. So I will maybe start it and I'll bring in something that I shouldn't have bought or whatever. And so it's important that for me, that while I'm the professor and I'm standing up there telling them what to do and giving them homework, that I'm also engaged in the same problem at the same level as they are. And I'm not perfect, and I make bad shopping choices too. So with this worn the least exercise, the nice thing is they really start thinking immediately. And I say, what is the material? And immediately they don't know. They're turning it inside out, looking for the label. Or they say, well, I think it's polyester, and it's, well, what is polyester? Where does it come from? Just to kind of wake up to start thinking about things instead of just taking everything for granted so much. And it does have an effect, I think. And the other thing is it brings the class together in a very nice way. And some people like, what someone else is wearing, even if they don't like it. And there's a big consensus often that the material, the textile is not nice, the feel of it. It was given by a relative, so you feel, obligated, so these emotional, all these things come out in a very simple way. And that's a very fun exercise, I think. And then it's followed up by a written exercise, thinking through your closet, where they analyze 10, they have to answer 10 questions. And that's something that you like and that you've worn a lot. And for me, I show them kind of what I'm doing, what I'm looking for. And the other part of it is including photography, and how things are photographed and how you present things is really important. And I'm very aware of that through my museum work, but also, of course, they're very, very cognizant of this due to social media. And this is my kind of go-to. I will be buried in this sweater that I bought ages ago. And it was sort of amazing to me when Linda Gross showed up on the UCRF talking about UCRF video, and she was wearing my sweater, and she's a woman with sort of my age with grey hair and glasses, and I sent it to my kids, and they were shocked. They didn't know if it was me or not, because I'm so heavily identified with this sweater. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside, but it's just interesting how things can resonate also because of this group, and I like that very much. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Minute. The other thing is with group projects, we do peer reviews. So one big group project, which is worth quite a lot of their marks, the class is divided into 2 sections, and they're given these industrial or industry reports to read and unpack and present to the other half of the class. And it's organized like if you were doing a professional meeting or if you were at a conference or something. And I do a lot of work to make it palatable for them. And these are reports that maybe they would look at and immediately close because it's too overwhelming, or it's boring, or it's something they don't know how to do. And but when they're doing it in a group, it's all kind of bite-sized, and they support each other and do that. And I like this exercise very much because this is real data and real information, and you need to be able to know how to access this. And also when they do their final projects, this is the kind of information that I expect them to use. So these are the ones I used last year. I try and find the newest kind of statistics for them, the newest reports, and they're different kinds. So the Business of Fashion originally did a sustainability report that was very good, but now it's not necessarily on sustainability anymore, and it's also really expensive. The library at the university is very, very good about resources and helping me get stuff. So all the videos are online for them through the library. And the library really is a fantastic weapon or tool for everyone. And I always really encourage that, because librarians are really fabulous. And it's more than just things coming through from the internet and virtually really going into the library, talking to librarians. Again, the social interaction, looking on the shelves. It's probably that book next to the one you were looking for that's the one that's going to really help you in the long run. But this kind of teaches them how to synthesize this information and how to present it. And in fact, last time they did it, I was so impressed that I wish I taped it, because people who wouldn't have read the reports would have got a really good kind of a synthesis of it and maybe gone back to look at it. Anyway, the students always do a really good job. They're amazing. Next slide, please. I also have guests, or we try and do field trips. Dr. Soren Brothers was a colleague at the museum. He's the first curator of climate change, very sweet guy, a limnologist. He works on water. And he and I did this exhibition called Noel Hamlin Lifers at the museum. That was an artist I met, and she did this installation. She repurposes found life jackets and vintage clothes, secondhand clothes, and retailers them for the life jackets. And it's this idea that, the waters are rising and we're on the Titanic, and we can't turn the boat around, but, we can still look good. So, and really to make people think. It was a very interesting show. It was a very different kind of exhibit for the museum. But I know Soren quite well from working with him through that. And so he is a scientist, but he's also an artist. He plays music, and he's very interested in how to engage people in other ways, because just giving, he knows that just giving the data and the science information, it's too much and people aren't listening. And next slide, please. Other guests I've had, and I'm always looking for new people, so I don't, I don't exhaust my supply. We went to a vintage clothing shop once, which is very near the university, which was important, so the students could get there in time and get back to their classes. That was very interesting, and they spoke to us about things. Jode Roberts came last term, who works for the David Suzuki Foundation, which is a huge Canadian institution, very much revered, talking about climate and nature. And he was interesting because while he's a leader in there, he sort of amplified the importance of local and local community. So he made up this project called Rewilding Arts Prize, which really kind of took off in a way he hadn't anticipated. And it's now at the Museum of Nature in Ottawa. But all these projects he does, the lawn share, the butterflies, they get taken out and supported by volunteer works in local communities. And that's the only way that we can sustain things and have things working. Also use my own interest in research in work that I've been doing on the extended life of fashion over time. And I mean like centuries of things being reused. And I'm interested in Julie Grieve, who's a Canadian designer who founded Pre-Love in the 90s, before sustainability was really a word. It was sort of eco-fashion or something like that then. And she's just managed to keep going. So there's a range of people that I'm interested in. Next slide, please. And that bring different kinds of knowledge to the classroom and move around in terms of the subject matter. Lloyd Alter, a long time, actually personal friend of mine, an ex-architect, teaches at Toronto Metropolitan University now and has this huge blog, and was for a long time correspondent for Tree Hugger, and is very, very interesting in how design and the urban environment impacts us. Deborah King, who I met at something I was attending at the Toronto Fashion Incubator, which is a place to nurture new designers, has this company, Global Measure, that certifies, and this is something I'm very interested in, and we talk about how to, how to mitigate things, how to measure, how to evaluate, who has authority, how do you do it, what does it mean, all this kind of verification, and who does it, and at what levels, and who pays for it. And then finally this year I cracked the U of T system because they opened something called a free store, and I thought, oh my goodness, let's go see what that is. And it's a free store that the university opened that's for use by faculty, students, and staff, university staff who aren't faculty or students, and people donate things, and you just come and can take anything that you want, mainly books, clothes, a sort of graveyard of water bottles that get lost, and apparently they get used a lot, some office furniture from the university. And when they first opened in October of last year, within 3 weeks, they diverted over 1/2 ton of stuff from landfill. And it's managed by this woman, Chelsea Dalton, who's in the sustainability office, which which is very, very science-based. And she is buying electric cars for the facilities plants and stuff like that. So it's very way out from anything I do, but they're super, super nice. And she's the one who said, well, you should, next slide, please, be part of Sustainability Week, and told me about the University Sustainability Week. And I wanted to get in there so that the class could become, and this kind of culture looking at sustainability become part of the larger discussion. And they were so nice. And of course, what the sustainability does is clothing swaps and so much stuff around fashion that I wasn't aware of. So it's very natural, and they're super, super energetic and enthusiastic and nice. So the final project that the students do is a video. so instead of writing a paper that I get and then they never look at again, I decided I'd get them to do a video using all the kinds of things that we've looked at, and they've looked at lots of movies and documentaries. And that would be their final project. So in the last two classes, we have a kind of screening and talk about things. So it's in manageable chunks, so they have to have the topic approved so that not everyone is doing the same thing and I can understand what they're trying to do. They have to have a title, an abstract, an annotated bibliography that specifically says the pages and why they're looking at those articles. And there's a range of articles they have to have, not only from the internet, but peer-reviewed articles in different kind of categories. And then there's the presentation in class where they lead a discussion, a Q&A, and this is peer-reviewed. Their video and their presentation is peer-reviewed. And then they submit the final thing to me, and they can change things if they want, which they don't usually do much because it's the end of term and they got tons of stuff. And the abstract can be revised, and the bibliography is actually the bibliography they used, not annotated, and the final cut video, and then I mark that, and that's the end. And these videos are what I thought, oh, well, maybe they can use them in Sustainability Week. So then I went back to, next slide, please, to all my past students who had amazing videos that are just sitting there on the U of T site so that no one can see them, just lodging them. And it was very hard to find some ex-students, and I didn't find all of them, and some of them didn't want to share, but it was also interesting to see where they'd gone and the kinds of work they were doing. So, and quite a few of them actually engaging in sustainability in different ways, whether it's through architecture, design, or law. One of my students has gone into law. Anyway, and so these videos became part of this, and they did the Sustainability Office did a very nice sort of PDFs and put things on the wall and stuff. And it was very nice, but it made me, and they said you need to have a YouTube channel. So it really came out from there because that's the best way to share them. Now, the videos are around 10 minutes, so you're not going to be sitting on your phone. It's the kind of thing you want to go and watch in your spare time, or, you know, you might find a subject that relates to something you're doing. So, but nobody really knows about it. So that was the thing, is to make people aware of it and to have this as a resource, which is the point of the site. And I welcome any of you who teach or are interested to go in there and look at things. And the students are, their grades really are on content, not production values. This is not a film class, but most of them are really very good because they're also savvy in doing this. And in fact, next slide, please. Two of them from different classes that I took early on, Cleo and Alex, were in this is also online, a conversation I had at the museum about talking about climate change and this kind of impact they made. So, you know, I see these students who've come through my class also as a resource and as a megaphone for talking about this. So it was very nice when I had this opportunity to actually use, you know, foreground to different students they hadn't met. They were from two different classes, and completely different. So, you know, these students are the future, and that's why I'm interested in talking to you and to them and to see, you know, how we can support them. We've kind of made this mess. Next slide, please. And they're the ones left with all this baggage. So this is just a kind of screenshot of the different subject matters. But then as part of Sustainability Week, you know, to do a kind of promo, I introduced a new facet to this assignment, which is these shorts, the ones at the bottom, the portrait view, where they have to do a 1 minute or less video before they've really done any work. They're just knowing the subject, and they have to say, you know, what the subject is and what they hope to find out about it. So that's kind of fun. And of course, you know, I'm happy for them to do anything on social media to promote things or to share and cross-list things. So so the challenge is keeping up with things as the course has changed over the years. So when I started the course, it was during COVID. I had university students who were in COVID in university, and now I have university students who were in high school during COVID. And that long resonance of COVID, we tend to not want to talk about it, but I think it's really important, and it has caused a lot of anxiety, and the students are also very, very smart because of that. And now also this year, the spring, you know, it seems like things are going back with the US and the reduction of the implication of tariffs and drill baby drill that's coming from President Trump. So as you think things are getting better, things aren't necessarily getting better. So the really difficult part of this course, I think, for me and for the students, is how to be positive, how to not just make it one long litany of depressing things, and you may as well just put your head in the sand. And there's so many great things happening. There's so many fantastic historical models. There's so many, we talk about banana fiber and very old techniques for making textiles and using resources. How can those be done to scale? There's a couple of videos about mushrooms, issues of leather, and social justice is very, very big for the students. And the students are from diverse backgrounds. And it's very nice to see them really being our future change makers. So next slide, please. So to wrap up, really, this course is about shifting cultural thinking, and I've scratched out textiles and fashion because it just has to happen, whether my focus is textiles and fashion, and it's a really good in to this subject. It's people are amazed. When I did the Lifers exhibition, people didn't know about the amounts of landfill and waste or the amount of water a t-shirt uses. People are horrified. They want to know, they want to help, they want to do something and be responsible. And with this new Loss and Climate Institute, I'm hoping, and I'm going to try and advocate for a foundation class in sustainability and this cultural idea of sustainability. So just as you go into an art school, and you used to, or some places still do, have this foundation class where they throw all these different kinds of ideas at you in different kinds of mediums, and you just kind of fumble around and see what sticks or what makes sense or how you can do it. I really advocating for an undergraduate level class that's sort of like an intro to, like, what can you do? And it maybe could be taught like some of the newer art history undergraduate courses that look at global art history, and they're taught from different professors. It's kind of tag teaching from across different disciplines. And I think it would be an amazing class, and the students would love it. And you could get this different kind of information and knowledge of approach, and they could feel equipped to go into everything else with a basic understanding. So this kind of kaleidoscopic approach to climate change, which is also complicated because it makes it all so big that you don't know where to put yourself. But if you go into these bite-sized things, people, I think, work it out. So I'd like to open it up for Q&A now. And, you know, what do you think? What do you do? How do you do it? How would you do it differently? How do we deal with this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandra. It was really inspirational and really provoking. So thank you so much for your vision and for your work. And now the floor is open for an inclusive conversation, but I can actually break the ice because I was reflecting and I was listening. And Alexandra, what really stood out for me was inclusion and diversity in your approach, but also in the messages you are collectively creating. Also, one thing that I'm hearing from my students all the time, new generation is different. they are more critical, and also they are more empathetic. And when we approach things, when we talk about sustainability, what is really interesting to me, my students now are more critical, and they are really challenging the underlying assumptions, definitions, facts, numbers. So I was wondering if you come across anything like this in your class over the years, an intergenerational change, or the way students are engaging with the argument. How do you see the change?
I think they are. I mean, certainly because they've lived through COVID and because they're young and they come from very diverse backgrounds and ethnicities and religions and all this stuff. And Toronto is kind of, still Canada is still a good place to embrace that. So they and actually just the food trucks outside the university have changed since I was there. They're like a litmus test of what people want and what they want to eat. So they're very, very concerned about social justice. That is very, very big fairness, and life is not fair. And also how also this year when I started, a lot of people don't sew, like they're not makers in that way. They come as academics, they come from different parts. So I'm not teaching fashion students, for instance, or people who've ever really put stuff together. So now this year I had more students who sew, who are makers, who only wear or are very, very knowledgeable about secondhand clothes. So this is a new, different generation. The first class, very few of them wore secondhand clothes. And the interesting thing is that, that there's still overconsumption for secondhand. And this became an issue for them and came into the class in a different way that I found very interesting. Like overconsumption is overconsumption, overproduction, and so they were very interested in how they are, because they wear secondhand clothes, they're sort of off the hook, but they're not really off the hook. So that was interesting. I mean, they teach me, they teach us, we need to listen. And, they can vote, and I want them to vote, and they need to vote. And, I'm talking about business leaders, all of whom are, like their dad's age or older than their dads. So it's hard. How can they feel that they have agency? That, I think, is the really important thing, is to give them, feel that they do know what they're talking about, and they know better than I do, and they know how to back it up. And that's really, like, if I can give them that, I'm really happy. And I do get very nice feedback from them at the end of the class, and they say everyone should take this class. And it's like, but which is why this idea of a kind of foundation class in the university, I think, would be amazing. Talking about, because everyone's working from different aspects, and it's so interesting.
Absolutely. And you say something really important. You said, I learn from them, they teach me. So it is also quite important to be reflective and also reflexive, because it is a knowledge platform, and the knowledge is an iterative process. So we actually go both ways. Also, it is really important to challenge that concept of teaching and creating conversations, because it is a dialogue, and also we are in that space with them, and it is quite fundamental to be able to create that safe space for everyone, so then we can improve our learnings altogether. Any more reflections, any questions, any takeaway suggestions? Hazal, yes, please.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for
Hey,
sharing.
Hazel.
Lovely to see you. I thought one comment. I thought it was really clever for you to have the YouTubes, because you're saying about this like deer in the headlights attitude, which we all have in students. But I mean, I think that was really clever to do that, so students are producing something which can be shared, in a medium which they and their peers look at, and can be shared more widely than the course. I think the course is lovely. I mean, and it's really important. But I did think that was actually a very it was a very clever thing to do. So the YouTubes are the students are just making their videos on phones. They're doing it in a very kind of simple way.
Yeah, on computers, it's very
Yeah.
very simple, and some people are better at it than others. And in fact, we, you know, they always have questions when they're doing it, and then they sort of share, oh no, you do, you know, they give
Yeah.
other people like what platforms to use, or the who is it, the there's someone I can't remember. Anyway, they're very, very cognizant of that.
Exactly.
But then actually, when I was trying to get their videos into Sustainability Week, which is how the channel came out, and I had to go back, by the way, and get permission from all the students and have them sign off and all these things. So it's, and a lot of them, I don't know where they are in the world, and so I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn and stuff. And some of them I just couldn't find, which breaks my heart because their videos were really good. But they, you know, the idea is that, you know, you can share them, and there's no point in them doing a paper at the end. Like, it's useless. But this is their medium. But one thing one of them said is they're actually really fed up with looking at screens too. So, you know, how do you, you know, print is kind of back and stuff. But so you have to listen. But I do, you know, social media is their thing. It's, well, you know, certainly not mine, as Vinit knows. But I think it's, you know, a way for them to be seen and have a voice, and they just the way they look at things and approach things. I don't know if you had time to look at some of the videos. I mean, they're good and they're solid. So, you know, I'm very proud of their videos, if you can't tell. And I, you know, I'm very happy when they share them and allow them to be on the channel and collaborate. Thanks, Hazel.
Yeah, actually, just one, if I may, one more thing on that, on books. I mean, I think you're also right about books coming back, and little books. This is a completely you know, self-focused plug, but I'm actually in the moment co-editing a new series, Bloomsbury series, with co-editing with Regina Root. It's called Fashion in Action. If anybody's interested, I can tell you about it. I'm not going to do it now, but it is a series of little books, which I think that's interesting too. So if anyone's interested in that, I can tell you. But so I think you're right. I think, you know, the sort of combination of information flow is also something to think about. But anyway, thanks.
Yeah, and some of the sort of zines that are online.
Yeah, exactly.
And the nice thing about teaching this course too is, you know, the university has a fabulous library. It's brilliant. But a lot of stuff is online. So for my historical things, a lot of stuff isn't online. So, you know, they really can. They have no excuse for not accessing it. Let's put it that way.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Alexandra. And Leah, we are with you. Yes, please.
Hello, hello. Thank you. Thanks. Nice to be here. Nice to see Hakan after a long time. Alexandra, I'm very thrilled. We are very much in the same ecosystem. I teach at George Brown College. We had a sustainable fashion program from 2017 till about 2020. Anyway, so we, you know, did a lot of curation around that. I was very, very impressed with the resources that you use. I found them to be very dynamic. I think we still lean too much on old texts, and, you know, also when you open it up to the internet, there's all the challenges of knowing the veracity of the content. And I really appreciated how you zeroed in on library resources, and even a walk through the library. I'm like, I'm going to do that. So I think this is, you know, these are all good ways to take away from that fear of them just sort of using AI to create content, you know, making the outputs that they have to do for their
I told you.
Yeah.
Thing, which actually I did have them write movie reviews, which now I realize are completely useless. So, you know, you the professor, the teacher, has to become more creative in your assignments in order to around AI. So actually the reflection part is going to become bigger, because they can't reflect unless they've actually read it or done it, which is all I really care about. And they
breaking down the report. That's so good. You know, the Fashirev reports, etc. Really dynamic. Yeah. I just wanted to say, I tried some research, and this is an art history group, and so I found it fascinating, that connection between fashion and art history, because I did a very small research project using artistic research methods. So trying to bring in reflection and art creation in fashion. But this wasn't for my courses. This was actually outside for a little research project. I'd love to introduce that to you, and we can continue to talk about it, because yeah, Deborah King was a student of the FX, and Julia Grieve was one of the people I interviewed for my assignment. But yeah, I'm very excited to hear all the work that you're doing. And I think that's still the thing that still bothers me. Of course, we're in very different, I guess the nature of the student that I'm seeing at George Brown College has a focus on being able to be work ready. They have to be able to jump into the workforce, and our metrics are all about the labor market, whatever they call that, LMI. How ready are they? And so it is. That's my challenge, and I don't know whether you find the same.
Well, the students, I mean, they come from art history, but a lot of them have very interesting double or triple majors. So, and they're very, they're very diversified. They're very, the math student was amazing because he also is in the ballroom scene of Filipino background. So, when I was talking about Pina cloth, like, you tell me about Pina cloth,
Yes.
and and very interested in zero waste. But his video, which unfortunately is not online, he looked at zero waste. He looked at the mathematics of this, and this student's work, designer's work, who actually comes out of Timo's program in Australia. So very, very interesting, and a very good teacher. He's a wonderful student. Man, but so it's very nice when you get those people coming in from different ways and kind of unpacking things that are more difficult for me. I'm not a math person, I can tell you that. But it's all, fashion is math, like, as well. And speaking is math, so it's very, very interesting. So the more difference is good, I think. And certainly adults are very concerned, mothers, grandmothers particularly.
Yes.
They're eager to, like, how do we get this into, as just a normal part of the curriculum at all levels?
Yeah, thank you. I'll give everyone to hand it over to anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah, for the reflection. And any other takeaways, suggestions, questions, provocations to Alexandra?
No, I'm interested in what other people think and do, or have ideas, or I mean, I like the two exercises, worn the least and worn the most, are two of my favorite things that everyone can participate. Yeah. It does, if you, how many people worked on your thing, how did it come to you? What are you going to do with it? It's like, oh, well, I never thought about that. How do you clean it? It's so simple, and everyone has to deal with this stuff. Like, where is a way? Like, there is no way. It's nice. So at a very basic level, whoever you're talking to is sort of, immediately with you when you start. That's the great thing about fashion and textiles, is everyone engages at some level. Yes. And it's such a wonderful access point to have more complicated discussions.
Absolutely. Elsa, yes, please.
Hi, Elsa.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm here from Portugal. I'm in Lisbon. I tried to catch up all the things that Alexandra told to us. Sometimes it was not easy for me to catch up all, but I would like to make a question, if I may, to Alexandra. if I right understood, you gave this course to a lot of different background students with a lot of areas of knowledge, but you also had fashion students in the course, right?
No,
No.
none of them are fashion students. They're all from the university. Some of them are in a like part art program, and some of them are makers. But when they come into the class, I assume. In fact, this year I did like a paper, you know, zero waste paper thing, so that they could really understand it. And so it's, no one has a background. You don't. It's not that there is any sewing knowledge anymore, any making knowledge or understanding about materials knowledge. So zero. So that's why the videos, like loading them up at the beginning, I said, this is like, there's a lot of homework at the beginning of class, because that's the easiest way for them to, and for me, I can't teach them about all this stuff.
Yeah, I was asking this because I think that is a great opportunity for all the community, all the class community, and the fashion students also to engage with other perspectives, and it would be great. I was just thinking about my own faculty. I'm working in Lisbon in the architectural faculty, where we have a fashion design course. I'm not teaching now there, but I'm studying there now for the moment. And I talk a lot with other colleagues and other professors. And sometimes we talk about that urgent need of putting the fashion students working in diverse groups, not as fashion students, but as another participants, as other voices, and bring them together. That's not easy to do because there are curricular constraints and all that thing. But you know, that's interesting to think that we can open more the community. We can. It's important to the students that they can deal in academia with a lot of different perspectives and learn from those perspectives too. Things that I was thinking about when I was watching your presentation.
Well, it's, you know, they don't get too much about sort of, you know, economics and law and legislation and all those things, which to me are really important, like who controls things. And it's, you know, it's wicked when you start looking at all this stuff. And you know, but these are everyone, they're all stakeholders, and that's why it's so hard.
Yes, of course.
And people are going to lose jobs, and it's hard, you know, and the unions, it's so complex. But rather than shying away from that, I think you have to show that and make it, that's what makes it overwhelming. But, you know, where can you position yourself in that? What is important? And, you know, how do we do the, you know, extended producer responsibility? This is huge. Huge. You know, and we got tariffs now. It's all there in front of us, like it's all happening in real time.
And in Europe, we are in standby to see what is going to happen with the Portuguese trade with the US.
I know, that's it always was. The Portuguese trade goes back, you know. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. But also it is really important to underline, as you pointed out, Alexandra, things are quite intertwined: practice, theory, research, implications for policy. So we are all stakeholders and we are all responsible equally, and we are all together in this. So thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for showing us a very creative way to move forward. So thank you everyone for your time, for joining us today. And we will upload the presentation to YouTube, and hopefully it will lead to many more conversations. And thank you, Alexandra, again for your time. Thank you, Vinit, for everything, all the organizations behind the scenes. Perfect.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexandra. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. See you later.
Bye.